The cargo ship Metal Runner drifted quietly through space, carrying its load of construction materials to the mining colonies on Kepler 442b. Captain Lee Jean sat in his worn leather chair on the bridge, sipping synthetic coffee and watching the stars through the main viewport. His small crew of 8 had been making this same run for 3 years without incident. The route was considered safe, far from any known alien territories. Communications Officer Park Min looked up from her console with a frown. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange on long-range sensors. It's big and it's moving fast." Lee Jean set down his coffee cup and walked over to her station. The display showed a massive object approaching from the edge of the solar system. It was easily 10 times larger than any human ship he had ever seen. Could it be one of ours? Maybe a new colony ship. Engineer Kim Hwan shook his head from his position at the engineering console. "No way, Captain. Look at those energy readings. That thing is putting out more power than our entire home fleet combined." The object grew larger on their screens as it approached. Within minutes they could make out its shape, an enormous vessel with a dark hull covered in strange markings. Rows of what looked like weapon ports lined its sides, and energy fields shimmered around its hull like heat waves. "Captain," Park Min said, her voice tight with worry, "they're sending us a signal. Put it on screen." The main display flickered to life, showing a creature that made Lee Jin's stomach turn. It stood upright like a human but had scaly green skin and 4 arms. Its head was elongated like a snake's, with bright red eyes that seemed to glow in the darkness. When it spoke, its voice was cold and mechanical. "Primitive humans," the creature said in perfect Korean, which somehow made it even more frightening. "I am Commander Vextal of the Kelhuri Empire. Your species has been identified as technologically inferior. You will surrender your cargo immediately and submit to questioning about your homeworld's defensive capabilities." Lee Jean straightened his shoulders, trying to look braver than he felt. "This is Captain Lee Jean of the human vessel Metal Runner. We're in human space conducting legal trade operations. We don't recognize your authority here." The alien's mandibles clicked together in what might have been laughter. "Human space? You claim ownership of this sector with your primitive metal ships and chemical rockets? How amusing. Your entire civilization is barely more advanced than the Stone Age races we conquered last cycle." Navigator Choi Su whispered from her station. "Captain, I'm reading at least 50 smaller ships launching from that thing. They're heading straight for us." Commander Vextal continued speaking, his red eyes seeming to look directly at Lee Jean through the screen. "Your refusal is noted but irrelevant. We have studied your species from a distance. Your weapons are projectile-based, your ships burn chemical fuel, and your computers are mechanical rather than quantum. You cannot possibly pose a threat to our technology. What do you want with us?" Lee Jean demanded. "Information about Earth's defenses, the locations of your colonies, and your industrial capacity. Your species will make adequate slave labor once properly trained. Those who cooperate will be treated well. Those who resist will be eliminated." The alien ship moved closer, and Lee Jean could see it was even larger than he had first thought. Weapon emplacements covered its hull like barnacles on a ship. Strange energy fields danced between projecting spikes, and the whole vessel seemed to pulse with contained power. "Sir," Kim Hwan reported from engineering, "they're scanning us with some kind of energy beam. It's going right through our hull like we're not even here. I've never seen anything like it." Park Min looked up from her communications panel. "Captain, they're jamming all our transmissions. I can't reach the colonies or Earth Command." The first wave of alien fighters swept past their ship, moving in perfect formation. Each one was sleek and fast, crackling with the same energy fields as the mothership. They circled the Metal Runner like sharks around wounded prey. "Your scan is complete," Commander Vextal announced. "As expected, your vessel poses no threat. We are now disabling your propulsion systems." The ship suddenly shuddered as invisible forces gripped their engines. Kim Hwan's console erupted in warning lights and alarms. "Engine power is completely gone, Captain. They've shut us down without firing a shot. I don't even understand how they did it." Through the viewport, Lee Jean could see the alien boarding craft detaching from the main ship. They moved with purpose toward the Metal Runner, their hulls glowing with contained energy. Each craft was twice the size of their entire ship. "Boarding parties will arrive in approximately 10 minutes, the alien commander said with obvious satisfaction. "Your crew will be processed for intelligence value. Those deemed useful will be kept alive. The rest will be disposed of efficiently." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Lee Jean looked around at his crew, Park Min with her hands shaking over her console, Kim Hwan frantically trying to restart their dead engines, Choi Su staring at the approaching alien ships with wide eyes. They were just cargo haulers, not military personnel. None of them had ever faced anything more dangerous than equipment failures or space pirates. "Captain," Kim Hwan said quietly, "what do we do now?" The alien boarding craft grew larger through the viewports as they approached the helpless metal runner. Captain Lee Jean paced the bridge, his mind racing through their limited options. With engines dead and communications jammed, they were sitting ducks waiting for slaughter. "How long until they reach us?" he asked Navigator Choi Su. She checked her instruments with trembling hands. 8 minutes, maybe less. They're not in any hurry. Engineer Kim Hwan suddenly looked up from his engineering console, his eyes wide with a desperate idea. "Captain, wait. The cargo launcher is still working." "What good does that do us now?" Park Min asked from her communications station. "We can't exactly throw our cargo at them." "Actually," Kim Hwan said, his voice growing more excited, "maybe we can. The cargo launcher operates on a completely separate power grid from the main engines. It has its own fusion cell for safety reasons. They didn't disable it because they probably don't even know what it is." Lee Jean frowned. "Kim, that launcher is designed to eject dangerous materials in emergencies. It's not a weapon." "But it could be," Kim Hwan insisted, pulling up the cargo manifest on his screen. "Look at what we're carrying. 40 tons of titanium steel construction rods. Each rod is 6 meters long and weighs half a ton. Solid metal, perfectly straight, designed for building space stations." Choi Su began to understand what he was suggesting. "You want to shoot construction rods at their ship?" "Not just shoot them," Kim Hwan explained rapidly. "The magnetic launcher can accelerate cargo to 15% of light speed. That's not just fast, that's weapon-grade velocity. Do you know how much kinetic energy a half-ton metal rod carries at those speeds?" Park Min shook her head. "I don't understand physics like you do. Explain it simply." Kim Hwan grabbed a stylus and started scribbling calculations on his tablet. Kinetic energy equals mass times velocity squared, divided by 2. At 15% light speed, each rod would hit with the force of a nuclear bomb. And we have 80 of them. "But what about their shields?" Lee Jean asked, watching the alien ships grow closer. "You saw how easily they disabled our engines. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours." "That's exactly why it might work," Kim Hwan said, his excitement building. "Their shields are designed to stop energy weapons, lasers, plasma cannons, particle beams. All the advanced stuff. But kinetic energy is different. It's just mass moving really fast. The oldest weapon in the universe." Choi Su was running her own calculations now. "The physics check out, Captain. A solid object moving at those speeds. Their shields might not even recognize it as a threat until it's too late." "It's insane," Park Min whispered. "We're talking about attacking a ship 100 times our size with construction materials." 5 minutes until they board us," Choi Su announced. Lee Jean looked around at his small crew. They were cargo haulers, not warriors. Kim Hwan was a good engineer but had never designed weapons. Choi Su was excellent at navigation but had no military training. Park Min could barely handle the stress of a difficult docking procedure, let alone combat. "What are the risks?" he asked Kim Hwan. "The launcher was never designed for rapid fire. If I push it beyond safety limits, it might explode and take half our ship with it. Also, we only get one shot at this. Once we fire, they'll know we're hostile and they'll destroy us." "They're going to kill us anyway," Park Min said quietly. The alien commander made that clear. Kim Hwan continued his explanation. "I'll have to override every safety system and feed all our remaining power into the magnetic accelerators. The targeting system is basic. It's designed for ejecting cargo, not precision strikes. But their ship is so big we can hardly miss." "Where should we aim?" Lee Jean asked. Choi Su studied the alien vessel on her screen. "There, Captain. That section near the center with all the energy readings. It looks like their main power source. If we can damage that, their own power systems might do the rest of the work for us," Kim Hwan finished. "Big ships like that need massive amounts of energy. If we disrupt their reactor, it could cause a chain reaction." 3 minutes, Choi Su warned. Lee Jean made his decision. "Do it. Target their power section and fire everything we have." Kim Hwan's fingers flew over his engineering controls, bypassing safety systems and rerouting power. "I'm loading the first set of rods now. This is going to make a lot of noise and probably damage our hull." "Better than being dead," Lee Jean replied. Park Min watched the alien boarding craft growing larger. "They don't seem worried about us at all. They're not even raising their shields." Why would they? Choi Su said grimly. We're just a cargo ship. What threat could we possibly pose? Kim Hwan's console showed green lights across the board. Magnetic accelerators at maximum power. Cargo loaded and ready. Captain, once I fire this, there's no going back. They'll either be destroyed or they'll vaporize us in response. Lee Jean took a deep breath. Fire. The metal runner shuddered as the first construction rod launched into space at incredible speed, followed immediately by another, then another. The ship's hull groaned under the stress as Kim Hwan pushed the launcher far beyond its design limits, sending ton after ton of solid metal screaming toward the alien dreadnought at 15% of light speed. The first titanium steel rod left the metal runner at 45,000 kilometers per second, a 6-meter spear of solid metal moving faster than anything the Kelhari had ever encountered from such a primitive species. Kim Hwan watched his engineering display as rod after rod launched from their cargo bay, each one accelerated to incredible speeds by the overloaded magnetic systems. Aboard the Kelhari dreadnought, Tactical Officer Zekrin noticed the activity on his sensors. Commander, the human vessel is ejecting its cargo. Multiple objects launching in our direction. Commander Vextal barely looked up from his command throne. Pathetic. They think offering us their cargo will buy mercy. Continue boarding operations. The alien bridge crew worked calmly at their stations, completely unconcerned by the approaching projectiles. Their quantum shields could deflect the plasma cannons of battleships. Their armor could withstand direct hits from antimatter torpedoes. What possible threat could simple metal objects pose to their advanced technology? Science Officer Nextoy monitored the incoming objects with mild curiosity. The projectiles are moving at significant velocity for primitive technology. Approximately 15% light speed. Still irrelevant, Vextal replied. Our shields will deflect them easily. The first construction rod struck the Kelhari shields and passed through them like they were made of paper. The energy barriers that could stop laser beams and particle weapons offered no resistance at all to solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. The rod hit the outer hull with a sound like thunder, punching completely through 3 layers of advanced armor plating. What? Zekrin stared at his tactical display in shock. The projectile penetrated our shields. Before anyone could respond, the second rod hit, then the third. Each impact sent shockwaves through the massive ship. The fourth rod struck near the bridge, causing the lights to flicker. The fifth and sixth rods hit the weapons section, destroying 2 plasma cannon batteries and explosions of sparks and molten metal. Impossible. Commander Vextal roared, gripping his command throne as the ship shuddered around him. How can primitive kinetics penetrate quantum shielding? Science Officer Nextoy frantically worked at his console, trying to understand what was happening. Sir, the kinetic energy levels are beyond our design parameters. Our shields were calibrated to deflect energy weapons and exotic matter. These are solid objects with enormous mass moving at extreme velocity. The 7th rod punched through the ship's main hull and struck a secondary reactor. The explosion that followed lit up the bridge with emergency lighting as power systems throughout the vessel began failing. The 8th and 9th rods hit the communications array, cutting off contact with the boarding parties. The humans have turned basic physics into a weapon, Nextoy continued, his voice filled with growing panic. Kinetic energy equals 1/2 mass times velocity squared. At those speeds, each projectile carries the destructive power of a fusion warhead. More rods continued to slam into the dreadnought. The 10th struck the main sensor array, blinding the mighty vessel. The 11th and 12th rods hit the primary shield generators, causing the protective energy fields to flicker and die. Without shields, the remaining projectiles tore through the hull like bullets through cloth. Commander Vextal watched his ship being torn apart by what should have been harmless cargo. All weapons target the human vessel. Destroy it immediately. But it was too late. The 15th rod had penetrated deep into the ship's core and struck the main fusion reactor. The massive power plant that drove the dreadnought began to lose containment. Energy that had been carefully controlled for decades suddenly ran wild through the ship's systems. Reactor breach in Section 7, shouted the damage control officer. Cascade failure spreading to secondary reactors. The great Kelhari dreadnought, terror of a dozen star systems and conqueror of entire civilizations, began tearing itself apart from the inside. Explosions rippled along its hull as overloaded systems detonated. The ship that had seemed invincible minutes before now listed helplessly in space, venting atmosphere and debris. On the bridge of the metal runner, Captain Lee Jean and his crew watched in amazement as the alien vessel broke apart. The massive ship was splitting in two, its hull cracking along stress lines as internal explosions continued to wreck its structure. "I can't believe it worked," Park Min whispered, staring at the destruction on their main screen. Kim Hwan checked his engineering display, hardly daring to believe the readings. "We fired all 40 rods in less than 30 seconds. The launcher is completely burned out, but it did the job." Navigator Choi Soo tracked the debris field that had once been the mighty alien dreadnought. "Their boarding craft are retreating. I think they're trying to rescue survivors." The alien fighters that had been circling the metal runner like predators now scrambled to assist their dying mothership. Emergency pods ejected from the breaking vessel as its crew abandoned ship. The great weapon that was going to enslave humanity had been destroyed by construction materials and basic physics. How did they not see this coming? Lee Jin asked, watching the final explosion that split the alien ship completely in half. Kim Hwan shook his head in wonder. They were so advanced they forgot the fundamentals. They built defenses against energy weapons, exotic matter, quantum attacks. But kinetic energy is the oldest force in the universe. Mass times velocity. It doesn't care how advanced your technology is. The emergency beacon from Commander Vextal's escape pod transmitted frantically to the retreating Kelhuri fleet, carrying a warning that would change the balance of power across the galaxy forever. Commander Vextal floated in his small escape pod, watching the debris of his once mighty dreadnought drift past the viewport. His 4 hands shook as he activated the emergency communication system, sending an urgent message across all Kelhuri military frequencies. "All Kelhuri forces, all fleet commanders," he transmitted, his voice filled with panic. "This is Commander Vextal of the destroyed flagship Dominance. The humans are not what we believed. They possess devastating kinetic weapons that can destroy our largest ships. The flagship is gone. Repeat, humans have planet-killer kinetic bombardment systems." The message traveled through space at light speed, reaching Kelhuri outposts and battle fleets across the sector. Within hours, the shocking news had spread to every corner of the alien empire. The humans, who had been dismissed as primitive cargo haulers, had somehow destroyed their most powerful warship. At Kelhuri High Command, Admiral Thexmore stared at the recorded message in disbelief. "Play it again," he ordered his communications officer. He had served in the Kelhuri fleet for 40 years, conquering dozens of species. Never had he seen a primitive civilization destroy one of their dreadnoughts. "Sir," his science advisor said nervously, "our analysis of the debris field confirms the report. The Dominance was destroyed by kinetic impact weapons. Multiple solid projectiles moving at approximately 15% light speed." Admiral Thexmore's tail lashed behind him in agitation. 15% light speed? What kind of acceleration systems do these humans have? "Our intelligence said they used chemical rockets." "That's what makes this so terrifying, sir. They turn cargo equipment into weapons. If they can do that with a simple merchant vessel, what can their actual warships do?" The news didn't stay within Kelhuri space for long. The Galactic Trade Network carried information between dozens of different alien civilizations, and the destruction of a Kelhuri dreadnought was big news. Within days, every major species in the sector had heard about humanity's kinetic doctrine. On the trading station Deep Haven, Commissioner Bexmore of the Centauri Republic called an emergency meeting with representatives from 6 different governments. The blue-skinned alien's 6 arms gestured nervously as he spoke to the assembled diplomats. "The Kelhuri contacted us this morning," Bexmore announced. "They're requesting immediate peace negotiations with the humans. They want to discuss non-aggression treaties and technology-sharing agreements." Ambassador Clix of the Andromedan Collective, a tall insect-like creature, clicked her mandibles in surprise. "The Kelhuri want to negotiate? They've conquered half the outer rim. What could make them so desperate?" According to their reports, human kinetic weapons can penetrate any known defensive system. Energy shields, quantum armor, even exotic matter barriers. Nothing can stop a solid object moving at those velocities. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Every major civilization had spent centuries developing energy-based weapons and defenses. Plasma cannons, particle beams, quantum torpedoes, all designed to fight other energy weapons. None of them had considered the possibility of simple kinetic attacks at relativistic speeds. "How many of these weapons do the humans have?" asked General Vixtar of the Orion Defense League. "Unknown," Bexmore replied. "But if they can convert cargo ships into kinetic bombardment platforms, they could potentially arm their entire merchant fleet. Thousands of vessels carrying planet-killing weapons." Meanwhile, the metal runner limped through space toward the nearest human outpost, its cargo bay empty and its magnetic launcher completely destroyed. Captain Lee Jean and his crew had no idea that their desperate act of self-defense was being discussed in alien government meetings across the galaxy. "Captain," Communications Officer Park Min reported, "I'm receiving multiple transmissions from Earth Command. They want an immediate priority debriefing when we reach port." "A debriefing?" Navigator Choi Su looked confused. "We just defended ourselves with cargo equipment. What's so important about that?" Engineer Kim Hwan was monitoring the space around them on sensors. "Maybe it has something to do with all those alien ships giving us such a wide path. Look at this, there's a Centauri merchant convoy that just changed course to avoid us by 50,000 kilometers. Lee Jean studied the sensor display. 3 different alien vessels had altered their routes in the past hour, all to stay far away from the small human cargo ship. "That's strange. We're not broadcasting any weapons signatures. Our launcher is completely dead." "Sir," Park Min said, monitoring alien communication frequencies, "I'm picking up transmissions in several languages. They all seem to be talking about something called human kinetic doctrine and relativistic bombardment capabilities." The news continued to spread throughout alien space. Trade routes were quietly altered to avoid human territories. Military planners began developing new defensive strategies. Scientists worked frantically to understand how solid projectiles could defeat their most advanced shields. On the planet Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council held an emergency session. Representatives from 47 different species gathered to discuss the implications of humanity's apparent military capabilities. "The humans have been operating in our space for decades," observed Council Leader Mertan, a crystalline being from the Sirius system. "We thought they were harmless traders and miners. How did we miss weapons of this magnitude?" "Because they weren't weapons," replied the military analyst. "Our intelligence was correct. They do use primitive technology. But they found a way to turn that primitive technology into something our advanced defenses cannot handle." The session continued for hours as alien governments tried to understand how a species they had ignored had suddenly become one of the most dangerous military powers in the sector. None of them yet realized that humanity's devastating kinetic weapons were actually just cargo equipment pushed beyond its safety limits by a desperate crew fighting for their lives. 1 year later, Captain Lee Jean stood on the observation deck of humanity's newest warship, the TFS Momentum. The ship looked nothing like the sleek alien vessels that filled the galaxy's trade routes. Instead of smooth curves and energy weapon ports, the Momentum was built around massive magnetic accelerator systems that ran the length of its hull like enormous rifle barrels. "The Kelhari Empire sent another diplomatic message today," reported Admiral Song Yu, joining Lee Jean at the viewing port. "They want to discuss expanding the peace treaty to include mineral rights in the outer systems." Lee Jean shook his head in amazement. "A year ago they were calling us primitive insects. Now they're offering us mining rights to entire star systems." Through the transparent aluminum window, they could see other ships of humanity's new fleet. Each vessel was designed around the same principle that had saved the Metal Runner, magnetic launchers capable of accelerating solid projectiles to incredible speeds. The fleet looked rough and industrial compared to alien ships, but every government in the sector treated them with extreme caution. Engineer Kim Hwan, now promoted to Chief of Kinetic Systems Development, approached with a tablet full of technical reports. "The latest test results are in, Captain. Our new tungsten rods can reach 22% light speed with the improved accelerators. Each projectile carries enough kinetic energy to crack a moon." "Any alien government been asking questions about our testing?" Admiral Song Yu asked. 3 different species have requested advance notice of our weapons tests," Kim Hwan replied. "They're worried about accidental impacts on their shipping lanes. The Andromedan Collective moved their entire trade route 50 light-years away from our test range." Lee Jean remembered the day everything changed. After the Metal Runner had reached human space, Earth Command had debriefed his crew for weeks. Scientists, military planners, and government officials all wanted to understand how a simple cargo ship had destroyed the most advanced warship in known space. The answer had been embarrassingly simple: physics didn't care about technology levels. A piece of metal moving fast enough could punch through any defense no matter how advanced. Humanity had accidentally discovered the one weakness in every alien military system. "Sir," Communications Officer Park Min said, approaching the group. She now wore the uniform of the human space navy instead of merchant marine clothing. "We're receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Council. They want to schedule another meeting about kinetic weapons limitations treaties." "What's their concern this time?" Admiral Song Yu asked. "Same as always. They want us to agree to restrictions on projectile velocities and mass limits for civilian vessels. They're still convinced that every human cargo ship is a potential warship. Li Jin smiled at the irony. The aliens weren't entirely wrong. After the success of the Metal Runner's desperate defense, human engineers had indeed begun installing kinetic launchers on merchant vessels. Not as weapons but as the aliens didn't know that. Navigator Choi Su joined the group, now wearing the insignia of a fleet navigation specialist. The morning patrol reports are in. 17 alien vessels changed course to avoid our shipping lanes. The Kelhuri merchant fleet is maintaining a minimum distance of 1 million kilometers from any human ship. They're still afraid, Kim Hwan observed. Even our unarmed transport ships make them nervous. The fear wasn't entirely unjustified. Human military doctrine had changed completely after the Metal Runner incident. Instead of trying to match alien energy weapons and exotic defenses, humanity had embraced kinetic warfare. The new human fleet looked primitive by galactic standards, but it was specifically designed to exploit the one weakness every advanced civilization shared. The Orion Defense League has requested permission to observe our fleet exercises next month, Admiral Song Yu mentioned, reviewing his diplomatic messages. They want to better understand human military philosophy, for mutual defense cooperation. Translation: they want to figure out how to stop our weapons, Li Jin said. Good luck to them, Kim Hwan replied. You can't build a shield against kinetic energy. Physics is physics. Mass times velocity squared doesn't care about quantum fields or exotic matter. A junior officer approached with another message pad. Admiral, the weekly intelligence report shows increased alien military research into kinetic countermeasures. 17 different species are working on new defensive systems. Li Jin looked out at the stars, thinking about how much had changed. Humanity had gone from being ignored as a primitive species to being feared as a major military power. All because they had turned the simplest weapons in the universe, rocks thrown very fast, into something no advanced technology could stop. Any word on actual threats? Admiral Song Yu asked. Anyone planning aggressive action against human space? None, sir, the officer replied. Current intelligence suggests all major powers are focused on diplomatic solutions. The consensus seems to be that war with humans would be too costly. Smart of them, Choi Su commented. Our new heavy kinetic platforms can accelerate projectiles to 30% light speed. At those velocities, even a small asteroid becomes a planet killer. Li Jin watched an alien merchant convoy in the distance, carefully maintaining its distance from the human patrol route. The ships were sleek and beautiful, clearly more advanced than anything humanity could build. But they steered around the crude-looking human vessels like they were sailing past sea monsters. Never thought I'd see the day, he murmured, when the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy would be afraid of humans throwing rocks. Kim Hwan grinned. Just goes to show, never underestimate a piece of metal moving at high speed.